Hi and welcome to Ryvis Rambles, where I talk about whatever the fuck I want. And welcome back to the needlessly thorough comparison between the drama and the novel of the Untamed that no one asked for. Today's video is the third part of this deep dive. I would recommend watching the first two parts of this comparison because I went through the first 20 episodes of the drama, meaning I'll talk about the next 10 in this video. If you don't know the drama yet, I'd recommend watching my video summary or the drama itself. You can watch it for free here on YouTube, link to a playlist in the description below. Let's get started. Episode 21 continues with the bittersweet reunion between Wei Ying and the Zhang siblings, which is briefly interrupted by Niu Huisang. Zheng Cheng then leads Niu Huisang away so Wei Ying can catch up with Zhang Yanli. While Zhang Yanli leaves to make his favorite soup, Wei Ying stares at his flute, unaware that Lan Zhan is watching him. News of Wen Xiao's death reaches Wen Ruihan, but yeah, whatever. Up to this point, none of this happens in the books. There's a banquet for Wei Ying's return, but Lan Zhan isn't there, and other people criticize Wei Ying for not carrying his sword with him. In the book, I suppose the flower viewing banquet is the equivalent of this banquet in the drama. However, the flower viewing banquet happens after the Sunshot campaign and before the siege hunt of Baifeng Mountain. During this banquet, Niu Mingjue also wonders why Wei Ying isn't carrying his sword, though he doesn't confront him about it. In the drama, Lan Zhan is playing his guqin and Wei Ying leaves the banquet. While he's taking a stroll, he catches the sound of the guqin and listens to the beautiful tune. Zheng Cheng joins Wei Ying and scolds him for not carrying his sword. Wei Ying comes up with some excuses as to why he doesn't want to carry it around. This does happen in the book, but at a different point. I'll get back to that scene later. It then cuts to Wei Ying meditating, and he has a flashback to his time on the burial mounds. Zhang Yanli comes in unannounced, which startles Wei Ying. They then talk about his new flute, and he names it Chen Qing. This sadly doesn't happen in the books. Meanwhile, Lan Zhan is gazing at his sword while remembering the time Wei Ying foreshadowed his own future. Wei Ying once again eats Zhang Yanli's soup, and back at Nightless City, Wen Ruihan is activating his puppets. The next morning, Wei Ying still is meditating, or again, trying to control the resentful energy. Zheng Cheng is frantically searching for him because the clans are having a strategic meeting, and Zhang Yanli tells him to calm down. She sends Zheng Cheng back to the meeting while she looks for Wei Ying. Jin Zixun bitches about Wei Ying's absence, and they continue the meeting without Wei Ying. Wei Ying is standing on a hill witnessing how the remaining Wen survivors are treated. It seems to trigger something in him, and he has a small outburst. Wen Qing is among the survivors, but I don't think he knows that. Zhang Li finds him on the hill and tells him to join the meeting. Wei Ying straight up lies to Zhang Yanli about what just happened, claiming it was the wind, and joins the meeting. After the meeting, the Lan brothers have a really deep talk about what's considered right and wrong. Zheng Cheng and Wei Ying run into the Lan brothers, which is rather awkward. Once again, none of this happens in the books. The closest thing to the last scene in the books is their meeting at the flower viewing banquet. However, Niu Mingjue is there as well, commenting on Wei Ying behind his back. In the drama, Zheng Cheng then asks Wei Ying about his breakup with Lan Zhan. Lan Zhan later runs into Zhang Yanli when he wants to pay Wei Ying a visit and tells her about his condition, because he's concerned. But Wei Ying doesn't know that, so he's not happy that Lan Zhan exposed him like that. This pisses off Lan Zhan, so he leaves without another word. Wei Ying runs after him because it turns out that he hasn't told Zhang Yanli everything. He wants to talk things over, but Lan Zhan attacks him. Wei Ying doesn't dodge the final strike, and there are two possible reasons. Either because he fully trusts Lan Zhan, or he knows he'll be killed sooner or later and wants it to be Lan Zhan. Or both. This is also where the episode ends, and yeah, none of this happens in the books. Lan Zhan and Wei Ying have a heartfelt conversation on a roof where Wei Ying promises to let Lan Zhan help him. The Sunshot campaign finally reaches its climax with everyone preparing for battle against Wen Ruihan. Wen Ruihan obviously isn't unprepared and gets his puppets ready as well. His puppets have reached Super Saiyajin level in the meantime, by the way. They're so strong that the incoming attackers are forced to retreat. We get a glimpse of Mingyao, who has been missing ever since he left Qinghe. In the books, he vanished after Niu Mingjue caught him, killing that Jin officer red-handed. Back at the station in Qinghe, some of the fallen members have turned into puppets themselves. The sect leaders have a debrief, and Wei Ying and Lan Zhan examine the puppets. None of this happens in the books. I mean, yeah, sure, Mingyao also infiltrated the Wens as a spy, but his time there isn't shown in the books. Then there's the famous soup drama between Jin Zixun and Zhang Yanli, which in the end turns out to be a huge misunderstanding, if that's what you want to call it. Wei Ying enters the tent and punches Jin Zixun, which also happens in the book. Lan Zhan then intervenes and holds him back. After a tense moment, Wei Ying leaves the tent willingly. In the book, it's Zhang Cheng and Jin Guanshan who have to stop Wei Ying, and Wei Ying doesn't leave willingly, he has to be dragged out. In the drama, Niu Mingjue asks Lan Xichen where he got the Wen intel from, but Lan Xichen says he can't expose his informant's identity yet. 7 days later, they storm Nightless City. Unfortunately, their plan backfires and the Lang clan and Zhang clan regroup after the failed attack. None of this happens in the books. Nie Mingjue, on the other hand, was caught by Wen Ruohan during his infiltration, and we finally learn that Meng Yao is working for the Wens. This also happens in the books. Outside the palace, a battle ensues, and inside, Meng Yao is humiliating and beating up Nie Mingjue. Yet, Nie Mingjue refuses to relent. The battle outside doesn't happen in the books, but Meng Yao humiliating Nie Mingjue is the same. The battle outside continues, with Lan Zhan protecting Wu Ying, and inside, Wen Ruohan shows off his new puppets to Meng Yao. While this doesn't happen in the book, Wen Ruohan still tries to impress Meng Yao by beating up Nie Mingjue for him. Just as the battle seems to be over, a second wave of these Urukai creatures come out. Wu Ying controls these puppets with his flute, and noticing that something ain't right, Wen Ruohan rushes outside. None of this happens in the books. There is a scene with multiple waves of walking corpses in the books, but much later during the second siege of the burial mounds. But it also means that Wen Ruohan stays inside the palace. That's important for what's about to happen in the next episode. What the fuck? That's important for what's about to happen in the next episode. Wen Ruohan joins the battle and chokes Wu Ying, who introduces the Yin Tiger Tally. While Wu Ying is being choked, the Yin Tiger Tally deactivates the puppets and Meng Yao stabs Wen Ruohan from behind. This is completely different in the books. As I mentioned before, Nie Mingjue infiltrated Wen Ruohan's palace, but there's no fight outside the palace, and Meng Yao stabs Wen Ruohan inside the palace in front of no real witnesses beside Nie Mingjue. When Wen Ruohan lets go of Wu Ying in the drama, Lan Zhan is there to catch him. Wen Ruohan is dead and Wu Ying faints. This doesn't happen in the books, beside Wen Ruohan's death. What's true in both versions though is the fact that the Sunshot campaign was a success. Nie Mingjue is still mad at Meng Yao, and Lan Chen intervenes, explaining that Meng Yao was the spy that gave him the intel. And so as to not raise suspicion, he had no choice but to torture Nie Mingjue. Doesn't change the fact that Nie Mingjue is livid. This also happens in the book. Wu Ying wakes up 3 days later with Zhang Yanli by his side. Soon after, Lan Zhan comes by to visit his patient, as he's done the last few days. The atmosphere is a bit awkward. Zhang Yanli leaves so Lan Zhan can play his guqin to calm Wu Ying's mind, as he's done the last few days. The two discuss Wu Ying's condition, and Wu Ying learns that the Yin Iron shards have been destroyed. In the meantime, Jin Guanshan is being sus because he wants the Jins to capture the Wen's remaining evil. None of this happens in the book. Meng Yao is finally acknowledged by Jin Guanshan and is now named Jin Guanyao. This is true in the book, though it only happens in passing. In the drama, Lan Chen asks Meng Yao for his opinion on the Wen survivors, and Meng Yao suggests to confine them at Chongqi Path. Lan Chen also consoles Meng Yao because Nie Mingjue is still sus of him. We're then shown a closed door with blood seeping through, indicating that the guilty Wen survivors have been executed. Outside, Wu Ying stands on a cliff, and Lan Zhan joins him. They have another small argument about Wu Ying's condition, but Wu Ying doesn't want to talk about it. The Jins are playing Hunt the Wens with the Wen survivors, and Lan Zhan and Wu Ying arrive on the field because they heard cries of help and protect the innocent Wens. The Jins leave, and Wu Ying and Lan Zhan play a duet to calm the spirits of the killed Wens. None of this happens in the book. The drama continues with the Sworn Brotherhood ceremony and its subsequent banquet. This only happens in passing in the books. The ceremony and banquet aren't even shown. They suddenly just are sworn brothers from one page to the next. And Wu Ying just assumes that either Lan Chen convinced Nie Mingjue to agree, or Nie Mingjue agreed because it facilitates his control over Meng Yao. In the drama, Wu Ying chills outside the banquet and Lan Zhan once again joins him. It's getting kinda obvious now. Inside, Jin Guanshan proposes to reactivate the engagement between Zhang Yanli and Jin Zishan. This is where the episode ends. This doesn't happen in the book either, at least not on page. The only interaction closely related to this is when Jin Zishan asked Zhang Cheng about Zhang Yanli during the flower viewing banquet I mentioned earlier in this video. But this happens after the Sunshot campaign, not after the Brotherhood ceremony. My hair's in the way. Wu Ying barges in to stop the engagement, blatantly stating his dissent. Before things can escalate, Zhang Yanli openly rejects Jin Zishan. This doesn't really help the situation, so Meng Yao steps in and invites everyone to the Baifeng Mountain siege hunt. Once everyone has left, Meng Yao reports to Jin Guanshan regarding the Yin Iron, basically once again making it obvious that he's just Wen Ruohan 2.0. The Zhangs return to Lotus Pier, and Wu Ying has a brief memory of his time with Zhang Fengmian. The Lans also went back to the cloud recesses, where Lan Zhan continues to learn new scores on the Guqin. While Lan Chen checks up on him, they're summoned by Lan Qiren. Lan Qiren wants to discuss the Sunshot campaign aftermath and that he's wary of Wu Ying. Lastly, he tells Lan Zhan to mend some books, probably to keep him away from Wu Ying. Lan Zhan asks him to enter the forbidden chamber of the library, but Lan Qiren won't allow it. While the Zhangs are busy rebuilding Lotus Pier, Lan Zhan is occupied with his assignment. Up to this point, none of this happens in the books. Even the rebuilding of Lotus Pier happens off-page. Some time passes and Jiang Cheng is training the Zhang disciples. Wei Ying isn't home, much to Jiang Cheng's displeasure. Instead, he's in town drinking the day away. Lan Xichen runs into him and Wei Ying invites him to a drink. They have a conversation over a drink, mainly about Lan Zhan, but it ends up with Wei Ying being annoyed by Lan Xichen, admonishing him. In the book, Wei Ying is also day drinking in town, but it's Lan Zhan who accidentally runs into him. Wei Ying invites him to a drink but doesn't really mean it because he thinks Lan Zhan would refuse anyway. However, against all expectations, Lan Zhan comes into the tavern. Wei Ying is chilling with his ghost friends and Lan Zhan once again reminds him of the dangers of demonic cultivation. So same as in the drama, their encounter ends with Wei Ying being annoyed. This scene takes place before the Baifeng Mountain hunt in the drama and after the hunt in the book, by the way. Wei Ying returns home where Jiang Cheng is polishing his blade, still mad at Wei Ying for loafing around. Jiang Cheng scolds Wei Ying for not carrying his sword around and pushes him, almost exposing that Wei Ying no longer has spiritual powers. This is the same in the book, except that Jiang Cheng isn't mad at Wei Ying for loafing around. He also only lightly scolds Wei Ying for not carrying his sword, and he doesn't push Wei Ying in the book. Wei Ying then goes to Zhang Yanli to whine, and there's a brief flashback of little Wei Ying on the streets. He then asks Zhang Yanli about love like a baby, which is really cute. Shortly after, Jiang Cheng joins them and the boys banter like in the good old times. This is pretty much the same in the book, but there's a minor and a major difference. The minor difference is that they don't have the emotional talk about the three of them staying together forever as a family. The major difference is a flashback. In the book, this is the part of the past where Jiang Cheng is bitter that he lost his dogs because of Wei Ying, who then hides in a tree and falls down after Zhang Yanli finds him. On their way back, they run into Jiang Cheng, who also got hurt, and Zhang Yanli feeds the boys with the soup once they're back home. The brief flashback that's shown here in the drama happens in the book after Wei Ying removed the curse mark from Jin Liang in the present. Apart from that, it's all the same. Jiang Cheng then turns serious for a moment, telling Wei Ying to behave at Baifeng Mountain. They also discuss Zhang Yanli's potential engagement to Jin Zishan. This doesn't happen in the book. They only have the last part of this conversation earlier when Jiang Cheng was polishing his sword. Even though Lan Zhan wasn't allowed to enter the Forbidden Chamber, he still did it, for love. The episode ends with the Zhangs, and especially Wei Ying, enjoying the peace at Lotus Pier while it lasts. None of this happens in the book, or I guess the closest to the final scene is part of one of the bonus chapters in which the Zhang disciples are dying in the heat of Yunmong summer. Jin Zishan visits Lotus Pier to personally invite them to the Baifeng Mountain hunt, as if they haven't all already been invited by Meng Yao, but okay. And while he's at it, he also asks Wei Ying to hand over the Yin Tiger Tally. This doesn't happen in the novel. This doesn't happen in the book. Chapter 15 of the books begins right with the opening ceremony of that very hunt, which we naturally also have in the drama. However, it's a bit more pompous in the book. In the drama, the sect disciples are all standing around ready to start the hunt. In the book, they ride in on horses and are showered with flowers. In the drama, Jin Zishan shows off his archery skills only to be outdone by a blindfolded Wei Ying. That's the same in the book, but in the book, Wei Ying keeps his blindfold on for the entirety of the hunt. Also, there are no Wen survivors below the targets in the book. The hunt starts and Wei Ying sits in the forest catching prey with his flute. This is the same in the book, except, as I mentioned before, he keeps his blindfold on. In the drama, Lan Zhan then runs into Wei Ying and they have a heartfelt talk, deeming each other their soulmates, essentially. This is very, very different from the books. Since Wei Ying is blindfolded, he doesn't know it's Lan Zhan who approaches him. When he wants to take his blindfold off, Lan Zhan stops him and roughly kisses him. This is their first real kiss. That's why I said in my first video that it was their first innocent kiss when Lan Zhan was drunk. I just think it's so funny how bad Wei Ying feels for stealing Lan Zhan's first kiss, when in truth it was the other way around. And Lan Zhan went much harder. Don't get me wrong though, Lan Zhan felt bad as well. So bad that he raises almost an entire forest. He's super mad at himself for taking advantage of the situation and giving in to his urges. Wei Ying finds him in that state, still unaware that it was Lan Zhan who kissed him. A bit overwhelmed himself, he teases Lan Zhan, who slowly calms down. In the drama, their conversation is interrupted by Jin Zishan and Zhang Yanli, who just happen to pass by. The two boys spy on the pair, watching Jin Zishan showing off his skills. This is the same in the book, but this is also where the flashback to the soup drama misunderstanding is inserted, which happened in episode 22, mentioned earlier in this video. When Jin Zishan is being insensitive again, Wei Ying jumps in and Lan Zhan protects him from Jin Zishan. Their scuffle is interrupted by Jin Zishan, the cousin, who's upset that Wu Ying doesn't know him. Before things escalate, Madame Jin arrives at the scene and tries to stop the conflict, to no avail. It still boils over until Zhang Yanli intervenes. She has her baddest moment in which she defends Wu Ying and shows the Jins who's boss. Little proud moment. Meng Yao and Lan Chen are late to the party and Madame Jin dumps all the blame on Meng Yao. People lose interest in the hunt, so it gets cancelled even though Meng Yao tries his best to mend the situation. Wu Ying wants to accompany Zhang Yanli off the hunting grounds, but Madame Jin deems it inappropriate. I wish I could read. Inappropriate. Which, okay, that's weird. They still try to leave together until Jin Zishan blurts out his confession. Up to this point, it's all the same in the book. The confession causes Zhang Yanli to change her mind and Wu Ying lets her go. In the book, he still escorts her back. Zhang Cheng is even later to the party. He only sees how Lan Chen comforts Meng Yao, who feels responsible for the entire mess. But no one tells Zhang Cheng what happened. This also happens in the book, except in the drama, Zhang Cheng asks Lan Chen and Meng Yao what happened, and in the book he asks Saklida Yao. In both versions, he only receives a vague answer. Zhang Cheng then overhears some random people gossip about Wu Ying. This also happens in the book. Since Zhang Yanli didn't come with him, Wu Ying gets drunk as he strolls down a street where he runs into Wen Qing. This is different in the books. After asking Zhang Yanli about love like a baby in the book, he strolls around Lotus Pier reminiscing about the past. When he stops at a stall to buy food, that's when he bumps into Wen Qing. The episode ends with Lan Zhan telling Lan Chen that he wants to bring someone back to the cloud recesses and hide them away. He also wants to do this in the books. Episode 26 begins with some kind of banquet at Golden Carp Tower, where Jin Zishan is stopping Su She from entering. Su She is recognized by Lan Zhan, and at the same moment, Meng Yao comes to defuse the situation. I think in the drama it's an after-hunt banquet, and in the book it's just a random banquet. We also don't know that the Lan brothers recognize Su She in the book. But Jin Zishan approaching Su She and Meng Yao coming to his rescue is the same. Meng Yao then greets the Lans before ushering Su She inside. In the book, Meng Yao leads Su She inside without greeting the Lans. In the drama, everyone is getting settled, though the Lans aren't happy about Su She's presence. Lastly, the Zhangs arrive. While everyone congratulates Zhang Cheng for winning the siege hunt, Wu Ying is slowly coming up the stairs, about to crash the banquet. Jin Zishan tries to force the Lans to drink, even though it goes against their precepts. Lan Zhan refuses to drink, no matter how much the others provoke him. The situation is diffused by Wu Ying, who grabs a cup and drinks it for Lan Zhan. Bit of gay tension happening here. Wu Ying then asks Jin Zishan for Wen Ying. Wu Ying then asks Jin Zishan for Wen Ying? Am I low-key bad at this? Wu Ying then asks Jin Zishan for Wen Ying, but Jin Zishan plays dumb. Since Wu Ying won't relent, Jin Guanshan interrupts and Wu Ying calls him out for being the Wen's 2.0. He then starts to lose his patience and intimidates Jin Zishan until he finally caves in. After receiving the info he wanted, Wu Ying leaves to deliver the good news to Wen Qing. This also happens in the book. The drama then cuts to a flashback to how Wen Ying has been tortured by the Jins. This only happens off-page in the books. Jin Guanshan then loses his shit during the classic table flip, and it's once again up to Meng Yao to salvage the situation. At least Lan Chen is there to comfort and support him. The people start to gossip about Wu Ying again, and Lan Zhan stands up for him. This also happens in the book, though the scenes have been switched a bit. The scene where Wu Ying delivers the message to Wen Qing happens after the banquet gossip, and the two head straight to Chongqi Path, where Wen Ying supposedly is. In the drama, Lan Zhan then follows Wu Ying, and once he's gone, the people continue to gossip about Wu Ying. This doesn't happen in the book. When Wu Ying and Wen Qing arrive at Chongqi Path, it's already nighttime and pouring. They search for Wen Ying, and Wen Qing indeed finds his dead body. Afraid of Wu Ying, the Jin officers want to flee, but make sure to kill any witnesses, in this case the Wen survivors, first. This is a bit different in the book. Wu Ying and Wen Qing also arrive at Chongqi Path at night, but Wen Qing doesn't find Wen Ying's dead body. Instead, Wu Ying summons the dead when the Jin officers obviously try to cover up the truth, and Wen Ying is among them, the dead. Seeing him, Wen Qing faints, and the Jin guards don't try to flee because Wu Ying basically never leaves them out of sight. After finding Wen Ying's corpse in the drama, Wu Ying scares the officers and interrogates them. Wen Ying returns as a puppet and starts killing the officers. Wen Qing wants him to stop, but Wu Ying can't control him. This is once again a bit different in the book. Wu Ying starts interrogating the Jin officers after Wen Ying appeared. Wu Ying also retains control over Wen Ying. Wen Qing can't tell him to stop because she already fainted. In the drama, Lan Zhan arrives at the scene and learns what happened from a fleeing officer. This doesn't happen in the books. Wu Ying proceeds to rescue the remaining Wen survivors while carrying Wen Qing, who has fainted in the meantime, and flees with them. This happens in the book, but Wen Ying is going wild and killing Jin officers left and right all the while. It's only after Wu Ying has freed the Wen survivors that he tells Wen Ying to stop so that they can escape. In the drama, as they escape on horses, Lan Zhan tries to stop Wu Ying. This doesn't happen in the book. Lan Zhan doesn't interfere with him here. This is also where the episode ends. Lanjan lets Wei Ying go, who kinda confirms my suspicion from earlier, that he knows he'll have to die and he wants Lanjan to be the one who kills him. It's a very emotional scene that's unfortunately missing from the books. Wei Ying then leads the Wens to the burial mounds, which only happens off-page in the book. The drama then continues with a conference in which the sect leaders discuss how to handle Wei Ying. Lanjan once again defends him, but this time Mian Mian also stands up for Wei Ying, which earns her Lanjan's eternal respect. The others don't take her seriously, so she defects from her sect and leaves, followed by Lanjan. This is the same in the book, with the only exception that Mian Mian isn't part of the Jin clan. The meeting resumes and Jin Guangchen puts all the responsibility on Zhang Cheng's shoulders. Later, the three Zun discuss the situation while Lanjan talks to Mian Mian. We don't hear what they're talking about because we see their interaction only from the three Zun's perspective, but they're obviously talking about Wei Ying. This is the same in the book. In the drama, the Lan brothers are back at cloud recesses, where Lan Qiren almost spits blood and punches Lan Zhan. And Lan Ling, Jin Zishan begs Zhang Yanli to stay. And at the burial mounds, Wei Ying is working on his experiment to restore Wen Ying's consciousness. None of this happens in the books. The drama then continues with the life of the Wens at the burial mounds. I guess it's also a bit of a time skip here. Wei Ying is playing with Ayun and planting him in the ground with turnips. With the responsibility to resolve the Wei Ying issue, Zhang Cheng visits the burial mounds and Wei Ying shows him his home cave, his crib. The episode ends with Wei Ying showing him his Wen Ying experiment. All of this happens in the book as well, though the order is a bit different. Zhang Cheng visits Wei Ying after the conference, and the life of the Wens on the burial mounds with Wei Ying planting Ayun is shown later. Zhang Cheng disapproves of Wei Ying's experiment and leaves after a small quarrel. This also happens in the book. The Wens then have a scarce dinner, after which Wen Qing tells Wei Ying to leave, but he wants to keep his promise of restoring Wen Ying's consciousness. This doesn't happen in the book. Zhang Cheng has a restless sleep, cutting to a flashback of Wen Qing returning the Kum. At the burial mounds, Wen Qing checks on Wen Ying, while Wei Ying rests outside, playing his flute to calm down Wen Ying. This doesn't happen in the books. Zhang Cheng and Wei Ying meet up to stage a fight, after which Wei Ying officially defects from the Zhang clan, so he won't be further implicated with Zhang Cheng. This also happens in the book, though it's more told than shown. In the meantime, Zhang Yanli has a symbolic nightmare of losing Wei Ying. This doesn't happen in the book. Wei Ying returns to the burial mounds after the fight as if nothing happened. This again is more told than shown in the book. Zhang Yanli stayed at Lanling, by the way, and Jin Zishan planted a lotus pond for her so that she has a little bit of home with her. That's kinda cute, but it doesn't happen in the books. 1 month later, Lan Zhan is at a tavern listening to a storyteller spreading outrageous rumors about Wei Ying. He's thoroughly pissed and lets everyone feel it before he leaves. And honestly, that girl looking after him at the market is a mood. None of this happens in the book. In the drama, Lan Zhan suddenly has a child attached to his leg. It then cuts to Wei Ying, who's haggling prices before realizing he's lost Ayun. He searches for him in a panic until he finds him attached to Lan Zhan's leg. This also happens in the book, but the order is a bit different. The whole thing is entirely from Wei Ying's perspective. After the domestic life of the Wens is shown, in which Wei Ying plans Ayun, Wei Ying goes to the market, haggling prices until he realizes he's lost Ayun, only to find him attached to Lan Zhan's leg. Lan Zhan is confused by the child, and Wei Ying pretends it's his son. In the book, he also teases Lan Zhan, but goes even further by saying he's the one who gave birth to Ayun. So in the book, there's basically no ambiguity whether it's actually his son or not. Okay, while editing, I realized he also says I birthed him in the Chinese version, only the English translation keeps it vague, but he still clarifies it more in the book. Wei Ying is then being mean to Ayun by not buying him toys, but Lan Zhan can't stand by and watch this cruelty, so he buys Ayun any toy he wants. Afterwards, Wei Ying invites Lan Zhan to a meal, and this is where the episode ends. All of this happens in the book. Not to brag, but I'm having a lunch break right now, and this is my food. Lan Zhan and Wei Ying are sharing a meal with Ayun over a nice conversation. Lan Zhan tells Wei Ying about Zhang Yanli and Jin Zishan's upcoming wedding. Wei Ying is happy for Zhang Yanli, but also sad that he can't attend. He then has to suddenly return to the burial mounds due to an emergency. He rushes out of the restaurant only to be stopped by Lan Zhan, who helps him carry Ayun. This is pretty much the same in the books, the only difference being that they don't run back, but Lan Zhan mounts his sword with Wei Ying and Ayun. Back at the burial mounds, the Wens are attacked by resentful energy because Wen Ying has awakened. Wei Ying and Lan Zhan manage to bring him under control, and Wen Ying regains his consciousness, meaning Wei Ying's experiment was a success. This also happens in the book. Lan Zhan stays at the burial mounds and Wei Ying shows him around. Just like Zhang Cheng, he also shows him his cave. Wen Ying and Wen Qing crash their date, and Wei Ying pretends to faint. Lan Zhan catches him, but as soon as Wen Qing takes out her needles, Wu Ying is suddenly fine again. Wen Ying offers Lan Zhan tea, which basically is just water. Wu Ying then sees Lan Zhan off and escorts him down the mountain. They're once again interrupted, this time by Ayun. All of this is the same in the book except for the last part. Ayun doesn't interrupt them because Wu Ying took him along right away. Lan Zhan and Wu Ying are sad to part, and Lan Zhan watches Wu Ying and Ayun walk back home. This is similar in the book, though it's not mentioned whether Lan Zhan watches them or not. In both versions, Wu Ying and Ayun have the rich gurgle talk, but in the book, Lan Zhan is defined as daddy and Wu Ying as mommy. The Wens prepared a surprise dinner for Wu Ying to show their gratitude, and Wu Ying gets super drunk. Once again, all he can talk about is Lan Zhan. That's the same in the book, though Wen Qing is the one who brings him up. There's also an additional scene where Wu Ying cooks for everyone else, but he's really bad at it. At the cloud recesses, Lan Zhan is once again punished, and somewhere else, some random people are gossiping about Wu Ying at a tavern to establish the split reputation. It's basically just exposition again. In the book, the punishment doesn't happen, and the gossip is simply a narration. Since the world is split between Wu Ying haters and Wu Ying stans, some fake disciples have emerged, trying to profit off the Yiling patriarch. This is also only narrated in the books. Wu Ying and Wen Ying arrive at the market where the fake disciples are selling fake merch, but Wu Ying can't be bothered. This doesn't happen in the book. There is a kind of montage of Wu Ying working on his experiments, which aren't all successful. He does work on his experiments in the books as well, and while most of them are still unfinished, it's never mentioned that any of them went wrong. Annoyed by Wu Ying's uselessness, Wen Qing sends him to the market to buy stuff. Wu Ying doesn't really want to, so he calls over his slave Wen Ying to drive him down the mountain. In the book, it's not Wen Qing who sends him, but Wu Ying going out of his own accord. End of the episode. At the market, Wu Ying and Wen Ying are selling turnips. Or actually, it's just Wen Ying, while Wu Ying gives unsolicited advice. The fake disciples are back again, and this time Wu Ying steals a bag of fake inventions. I don't know why, maybe for inspiration. He then runs into Zhang Cheng, who brings him to Zhang Yanli, who shows him her wedding dress. In the book, Wu Ying runs straight into Zhang Cheng when he arrives at the market, and his reaction to seeing him is less severe than it is in the drama. Zhang Yanli then lets Wu Ying choose a courtesy name for her future child, and they eat the lotus root and pork rib soup which Zhang Yanli brought. Zhang Yanli also gives Wen Ying a bowl. He can't eat it, but he keeps it for Ayun. While Zhang Yanli is having a conversation with Wen Ying, Zhang Cheng and Wu Ying are bickering like in the good old days. The Zhangs and Wu Ying then say their goodbyes, and Wu Ying returns to the burial mounds with Wen Ying, who carefully carries the bowl of soup all the way back. All of this is the same in the book. Wu Ying is too depressed to eat, but still tries to cover up his sadness. He wants to plant a lotus pond, but Wen Qing tells him that won't be possible. Wen Ying feeds Ayun the soup and is caught by Wen Qing. While he promised Wu Ying not to tell her of the meeting with the Zhangs, he can't lie to her. Wu Ying is reminiscing by himself in his cave when Wen Qing enters and hands him lotus seeds. None of this happens in the book. In the meantime, preparations for Zhang Yanli and Jin Zixuan's wedding are in full swing, all managed by Meng Yao. This also isn't shown in the book. I guess some more time has passed already because the first lotus is sprouting. Unfortunately, it's plucked by Ayun and Wu Ying can't hold back his anger. Ayun is shocked and cries, but when Wen Qing explains to him why Wu Ying is mad, Ayun goes and apologizes. The wedding preparations are in full swing, and instead of helping, Jin Guanshan is just observing and judging Meng Yao's capability. Jin Zixuan tells Jin Guanshan to go easy on Meng Yao. In the meantime, more lotuses sprout in Wu Ying's pond and his spirits are lifted. None of this happens in the books. 1 year later, Wu Ying just so happens to overhear that he has a nephew and is overjoyed. This isn't shown in the book. Instead, we as the readers learn about this through gossip when Wu Ying is already buying a gift for little Jin Liang. Meng Yao is playing with little Jin Liang, but Jin Guanshan won't let him hold the baby. The Lans are visiting Lan Ling, and Lan Zhan once again defends Wu Ying. He also proposes to invite Wu Ying to Jin Liang's 1-month celebration. Jin Guanshan doesn't like the idea, but eventually agrees after Jin Zixuan, Meng Yao and Lan Qichen persuade him. In the book, none of this happens. We only know that it was Jin Zixuan's idea to invite Wu Ying. In the drama, Lan Zhan is sent to deliver the invitation to Wu Ying, and Jin Zixuan tells Zhang Yanli the joyous news. This doesn't happen in the books. Outside, Jin Zixuan is pissed because he was against inviting Wu Ying, but also because he was cursed. Like, literally. Meng Yao pretends to be concerned, and the episode ends just when Meng Yao is about to give Jin Zixuan an idea. This also doesn't happen in the books. Instead, it's Jin Guanshan who blatantly tells Jin Zixuan to ambush Wu Ying without even knowing about any curse. He's just a fucking asshole. This also concludes the third part of this series. If you watched it to the end, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, are there any differences I missed so far? I certainly hope not, because I put a lot of work into this, but I'm only human after all. So if I did, let me know in the comments below. If listening to random people talking about random stuff on the internet appeals to you, leave a like and subscribe. And if you have any topics you'd like to hear me ramble about, leave your suggestion in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching and stay tuned for the next one. Bye!